Hey, I'm at 1051 Wyatt Road. The neighbors are shooting and the bullets are like hitting over here in our trailer. There was just a drive-by down here, sounded maybe like a big truck or something like that, and they just opened fire.
The night was eerily quiet in the Green Level Mobile Home Park in Alamance County, North Carolina. It was just after midnight on April 8th, 2021. The sound of gravel could be heard crunching under tires as two men pulled onto Wyatt Road. Barney Harris moved with tense purpose, a black ski mask over his face, gloves on his hands, a bulletproof vest strapped to his chest. His brother-in-law, 32-year-old Stephen Alexander Stewart Jr., kept watch outside in the darkness. Inside the trailer, Harris's heart pounded as he lay in wait, pistol drawn, illuminated only by the faint glow of a phone screen. They had come to rip off a Mexican cartel's stash house, a risky score of drugs and cash that could change their lives if they survived the night. About 20 minutes passed in anxious silence. Then headlights swept across the trailer's thin curtains as a car pulled up. The target had arrived. 18-year-old Alonzo Beltran Lara, a suspected drug runner for a powerful Mexican cartel. Lara barely had a chance to open the door before Harris and Stewart pounced. In a flash, they bound the young man's wrists and ankles with duct tape, forcing him to kneel on the dirty linoleum floor. Harris's voice was low and urgent as he demanded to know, "Where's the money? Where's the drugs?" Lara, terrified, either could not or would not say. Outside, Stewart's eyes darted warily for any approaching vehicles, sweat beading on his brow despite the cool spring air. Inside the trailer's cramped living room, the tension snapped. He had come too far to leave empty-handed. When Lara failed to produce the stash, Harris made a fateful decision. Harris pressed his gun to the back of Lara's head. Two shots cracked like thunder, barely muffled by the trailer's thin walls. Lara collapsed, executed close-range 2 bullets to the back of the head. The school teacher from Union County had just become a murderer. They began tearing apart the trailer, hunting feverishly for the cartel's hidden contraband. Drawers were dumped, couch cushions slashed, and paneling pried loose. They found some. A brick of cocaine here, wads of cash there, but not all they'd hoped for. In the time it took to ransack the house, they had kicked a hornet's nest. Almost immediately, chaos erupted outside. Other cartel members, alerted by the gunshots or perhaps an accomplice's failure to respond, stormed onto the scene. The still night was shattered by an eruption of gunfire from multiple directions, rounds lighting up the trailer park like a strobe. Harris barely had time to shout a warning to Stewart. An old Western-style gunfight was upon them. Bullets punched through the trailer's thin metal walls with lethal ease. More than 30 shell casings rained onto the ground inside and outside the home. Neighbors jolted awake, dove to the floor as stray rounds pierced their homes. One man's window exploded in a spray of glass. In the pitch dark of 1 a.m., the mobile home park was a war zone. The smell of gunpowder and the scent of fear hung in the air. When the gunfire finally ceased, Barney Harris lay sprawled in a back bedroom of the trailer, his body still and riddled with bullets. The 40-year-old teacher's bulletproof vest was of little use against the high-caliber rounds that tore through the walls. Harris's vest, mask, and gloves gave him the look of a professional killer, but they hadn't saved him from the fate he'd tempted. Nearby, Alonzo Beltran Lara, bound and brutally wounded, was somehow still clinging to life, though barely. Stewart saw his brother-in-law go down and made a split-second decision. He fled. With return fire still thundering, Stewart bolted into the night through a window, disappearing between the rows of dark trailers as cartel gunmen kept shooting, leaving Barney Harris dying on the floor behind him. When Alamance County deputies arrived moments later, they found Harris's lifeless body in the ransacked trailer and Lara bleeding out with 2 gunshot wounds to the head. The stash house itself was in shambles. Drawers yanked out, floorboards pried up, evidence of a desperate search for contraband. The officers also recovered an arsenal of 5 guns, about $7,000 in cash, and roughly 1.2 kilograms of cocaine, stashed in a black bag. A nearby power meter had been shattered by a stray bullet, cutting electricity to one of the trailers. 3 neighboring mobile homes were hit with bullet holes from the wild crossfire. The teacher turned intruder, and the cartel's young drug runner both mortally wounded amid the debris. News of the deadly shootout would soon reverberate across North Carolina, but in those dark early morning hours of April 8th, no one in Barney Harris's hometown knew the truth. At Union Academy Charter School, where he had taught Spanish and coached varsity basketball and track since 2017, Harris was a local hero. Colleagues and students knew the 40-year-old as a constant source of positivity. Whether on the basketball court, in the classroom, or at church on Sunday, Barney Harris was the guy with the big smile and bigger heart, always greeting people with a laugh or an encouraging word. All love, no fear. That was his personal motto, a phrase he lived by and often repeated to inspire his students and players. So when word spread on April 8th that Coach Harris had died unexpectedly, the Union Academy community was devastated. Grief hung heavy over the small charter school. Students wept in the hallways and parents hugged their children a little tighter at pickup. Yet amid the mourning, questions already swirled. Harris had been found dead 2 hours away from home, and the circumstances were shrouded in mystery. Initially, even his family didn't know the full story. The truth, when it emerged, hit Monroe like a bombshell. On April 14, 2021, Alamance County Sheriff Terry Johnson held a press conference that turned the tragic story on its head. In blunt terms, the sheriff announced that Barney Harris had been killed in a drug cartel shootout, revealing that this esteemed teacher had been living a dangerous double life. Behind the scenes, it appeared that Barney Harris had kept secrets from those closest to him. Harris never confided in friends about any dire money problems, and there's no evidence he was coerced. What is clear is that in the weeks before the shootout, Harris and his brother-in-law, Stephen Stewart, were hunting for cartel stash houses. They had a plan, one that required cunning, nerve, and a willingness to put their lives on the line. Harris and Stewart began tracking the movements of a Mexican drug cartel operating in North Carolina. Using electronic tracking devices and old-fashioned surveillance, they tailed cartel members along the highways and back roads, trying to pinpoint where drug shipments and cash were being stashed. Phone records showed Harris had even made prior trips to Alamance County, scouting the rural trailer parks that dot the area. By the first week of April, Harris and Stewart had identified a specific target, a rundown trailer at Lot 27, Wyatt Road, the home of Alonzo Beltran Lara, the teenage drug runner who worked for the cartel. The trailer in Green Level was suspected to be a stash house holding cocaine and cash freshly shipped in from Mexico, which must have looked like a golden opportunity to Harris. An isolated location, minimal guards, potentially tens of thousands in drugs and money, ripe for the taking. Harris, a high school coach, was venturing into the realm of cartel violence, where even hardened criminals fear to tread. But Harris was undeterred, or perhaps in the spirit of his motto, he refused to feel fear. On the night of April 7, 2021, Harris tucked his kids into bed at home in Union County for the last time and set out on the 2-hour drive to Alamance County. Investigators are unclear whether a cartel gunman or possibly friendly fire from Harris's brother-in-law dealt the fatal shot. As of mid-2021, Stephen Stewart, Harris's brother-in-law, is awaiting trial for his role in the deadly robbery, facing the prospect of spending the rest of his life behind bars.